Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Awesome Build. This is part 2 of our spaceship corridor. Last week we built the structure, and this week we're going to be focusing on building really dressing up the interior. And we're going to be doing it using really cheap items. In fact, some of the stuff is going to be stuff that you would normally have thrown away. It's going to be a lot of plastic containers and bottles and egg cartons, some really obvious items like a Gatorade bottle, or this cheap plastic food container that once contained strawberries, or a plastic egg carton. This is almost kind of a staple in all sci-fi movies. I feel like everywhere there's always an egg carton placed somewhere, if not multiple places. But once we paint them and add things to them, they become other things. They give a nice texture to the piece, and really that's what it's kind of about with the sci-fi element, is creating a texture that you can light very interestingly and stuff like that. It gives the hallway a little bit more dimension. And stuff like this you can find at the hardware store. Now this is used for installation. You can find it in your hardware store in the installation department. And they only cost about $1.80 a piece. And they come in smaller panels too. And they're super lightweight. It's basically just a vacuum formed plastic. It's really thin. And they're really cheap, and they have a great sci-fi look. And things like styrofoam. You know, if you know you're going to be doing a project like this, throw the word out there to all your friends and family if they have any styrofoam or anything like that to put it aside for you. Or you could even go to some electronic stores and stuff like that. A lot of times in their back room, they're just going to be throwing the stuff away. You can talk to one of the managers or something and say that just tell them what you're doing, or you want to get the stuff off their hands. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to just give you a ton of their leftover styrofoam. It's just going to wind up in their dumpster anyway. Or you could just go dumpster diving behind, Best Buy and pick out what you like. So the reason for this build, we are going to be using it for probably 1 or 2 Nostalgia Critics coming up in the near future. But it's also going to be a main piece for a sci-fi short that I'm working on currently. And so I want to be able to design it in a way that we can use it multiple times and reuse it without it looking the same. In fact, we're going to have a bunch of builds coming up in the near future, all revolving around this kind of sci-fi theme. And all of them are going to have something to do with this sci-fi project that I'm working on. And I will divulge more about that in the future as we get closer to it. But some of the projects will involve rod puppetry and building a robot, or building a robot suit, or building a spacesuit, sci-fi weapons, scratch building sci-fi models and ships that you can shoot on green screen. So a variety of different things as we get closer. And as I said, I'll divulge more about the project as we get closer. But you will also see it, I'm sure, in some Nostalgia Critic episodes coming up soon. So keep that in mind. All right, so enough of that. Let's just start building. All right, because this is a project that I've been planning for a long time, I've been accumulating and saving things for a few months now. So I have a huge pile of styrofoam pieces that we are going to be able to use. So not all of it is going to go into this particular build, but a lot of it is going to be used in general for this overall project. Also, all of these plastic containers. I've got several bins full of these plastic food containers. I've been saving them all over the past few months. I also have a ton of plastic and PVC pieces that I save from other builds, or things that are left over or scrap, or sometimes we just break down a build and the stuff that's left over. And I have a bunch of items that I just found at Goodwill or a dollar store that I just thought would look interesting, interesting shapes. Things like the dollar store, this is for your silverware in your drawer, but a couple of these together give an interesting shape. Yeah, same thing with these dollar store food trays, flipped around. If you add different elements to this and make it part of something else, it kind of blends in. It looks kind of like it could be a control pad or something like that. All of these things make just great things to work with as you're building, especially if you're building somewhat organically and you're kind of thinking like, well, I need a piece to fit here or a piece to fit there. It's kind of fun to play with all these different elements and see what kind of works best for you. So one of the first things we're going to do is paint the walls of the interior of our corridor. I'm probably just gonna go with like a flat gray or something, and then you can either go lighter or darker from that. If you wanna have elements that are white, or you wanna go darker with dark objects, and I think the gray will be a nice kind of backdrop to it, and it'll give it some dimension then either way. Also, I wanna point out a way that's kind of gonna be easy to quickly change up how you dress your set is magnets. So I took a piece of steel flat bar and screwed it right to my wall. Then I just took a piece of styrofoam and glued some little magnets to the corners. So you could just throw it up there, rearrange it if you wanted. Pretty easy. It works really well with super light objects like the styrofoam or these plastic pieces that I was talking about. I actually just put a little piece of self-adhesive magnetic strip on the back, and then that too, just throw it up on the magnet. Now you can use the bigger sheets or use them however you want, and you can place the flat bar all the way across or in different sections depending on how you want to dress it up. But this is going to make it much easier to dress and redress your corridor if you're going to be shooting multiple scenes, and it has to look like multiple corridors. Just pop that off, throw the next pieces on, whatever. I will say though that the steel flat bar is rather expensive. It's about $7 or $8 a piece, depending on the piece. I think this is a 4-foot piece that was about $8. So it is kind of pricey. You could just get a roll of steel strap, but you probably just need to use a stronger magnet for that, but it would be much cheaper. I have a few of these that I'm going to use, and then I'm probably also going to be incorporating the steel strap, and then some other ways we're just going to be mounting directly onto the board. But for now, we're going to paint it all, and then we'll start kind of dressing it up and seeing what different stuff you could do. All right, so I just used a gray primer, and 2 coats kind of did the trick. I had some scrap cardboard that I laid out, and just start sifting through all of the pieces and arranging them in a manner that looks right to you. However you kind of just start arranging the pieces in a way that looks good to you. But I would suggest going with similar patterns. So once I figured out kind of where I wanted all of my elements to be, I traced along the corners of all of them with Sharpie markers so I knew where the placement of the different objects was. And then I used my hot glue gun and went over and glued them all in place. And you can see what a difference the paint job makes. Now for these plastic panels, they're already black, but I wanted to dull them down a bit, so I went over them with Krylon flat black. And then I went over that with a nickel finish, just kind of a light dusting to kind of highlight some of the different elements. And then, to kind of give it a splash of color, I used red oxide to kind of give it a little bit of a rusted look. So when using styrofoam, you can't use spray paint because the aerosol in the can actually eats the foam. So I just used the black latex paint to give it a base coat. You may have to use 2 or 3 coats depending on the look that you're going with, or depending on how dense and absorbent that styrofoam is. So after that dries, do some dry brushing with a gray or a light blue kind of highlight all of those edges and raised elements. Now I have tons of scrap wire, so I took different colored wire, red, blue, black, white, yellow, and nested it together and taped it together so that I'm going to use that to run in between some of the different elements, some of the different boxes and things, and some of it can be hanging and stuff like that from the ceiling, but this will give it an added texture and give it more of a life to it. This is another way to add some color and to kind of tie things together a little bit. So you can start to see some of it coming together a little bit. All right, guys, well, that's all the time I have for this week. So I guess this is actually going to be a three-parter. There's still a lot of pieces that I'm in the process of painting, and some pieces are drying and stuff. And there's still a lot of clagging to do, basically. A lot of fine details and stuff like that. This is just one possible kind of look or general look. I'm still going to run lots of wiring and tubing and stuff to kind of bring it all out. We still have to finish up the top part. Yeah, sorry that we didn't get to finish it up this week, but next week we'll have it all finished. It'll be a completed corridor, and we'll go into some ways on how to light it and shoot it. So yeah, come on back for part 3 next week. Once again, thanks so much for watching, guys, and don't forget to look me up on Facebook at James Jim J-Raz, and I'll probably be posting a lot more updates about this particular sci-fi project that I'm working on my Facebook. All right, so thanks so much for watching. You guys rock. I'll see you next time.